show. We, as I mentioned last time, are going to be here every single game of the Knicks Celtics series leading right up to game time. By the looks of things, it could be a longer series than some people may have expected with the Knicks winning game one. Game one was obviously so exciting, and there's so many threads to discuss and what it all means for game two coming up. And I'm so excited to talk about it. As always, my brilliant co-host Jeff and I are gonna break it all down. And I do want to start by saying up front, just like why I'm so excited about this. And I was trying to think about it and thinking about the way that we cover basketball here on Hot Hand Theory. And I think to me, at the end of the day, basketball is a game of strategy, skill, and will to a large extent. Those are the three factors that make up the game. And the strategy part is the part that I love the most about basketball. And honestly, any game that I watch or consume or any sport, it is about understanding problems at a deep level and figuring out the most effective way to solve them. And I think that's the lens that we bring here on Hot Hand Theory, honestly. And I think that that is sort of what makes us unique. So if you're here in the chat, shout out to you. Appreciate you coming by. We are going to break things down. We are going to say some things that I know that aren't being said elsewhere. And that doesn't mean it's better analysis or anything like that, but it just means that's sort of our differentiation. And so appreciate you if you're interested in that, and appreciate us diving deep on the strategy side, because we are going to do that here. It is going to get a little mathy. It is going to get a little bit into the weeds, and hopefully you're a diehard fan of the sport. And so you want to hear that kind of stuff. So I don't know why I just felt like preluding our episode with that. But Jeff, what's up, man? How you doing?
That was an impressive prelude. Don't mean to continue with the glazing from last episode, but that was an impressive
Yeah,
job by you. Impressive intro.
appreciate
Yeah,
it.
this is a super exciting game. That was pretty just objectively unbelievable game one, in just terms of, I'm sure the 28 other fan bases that weren't losing their minds during that game just enjoyed a high quality basketball game that went to overtime. Saw Brunson miss a game winner, just as easy a game winner as you'll get on a beautiful pass from
Seriously.
Towns, and then the Knicks keep their composure in overtime and just handle business and take advantage of the opportunity that was presented to them by a lot to their doing, but then obviously some good fortune too with the 3-point shooting of Boston. So yeah, we'll dive into it. Excited to chat with y'all for the next hour or so.
Jeff, what do you think? Because we talked in the last pregame show, and I think this was really apt, and again, not something you necessarily hear, but we kind of talked about this variance factor, and it played out to such a large extent. Like like it played out exactly in the way where that was such a critical factor of the game, and it came down to, and I was tracking live. I'm like, how many threes is Boston going to miss? They missed 45 threes, which is absolutely insane. And I think, I do think the Knicks did a lot of great things that I wasn't necessarily expecting them to do. Tibbs made a lot of great decisions, I thought. Um, I do think there are some adjustments for the Knicks still moving into this game, too. I don't think it was like, well, we won that game, let's just do everything exactly the same. I think there are some adjustments to be made. And it's really interesting because I don't think that the Celtics have to make many adjustments. I think the Celtics are going to play the exact same way. I have a feeling that you might disagree with that. So I'm curious your thoughts on that, on the adjustments and who the onus of adjustments are on going into game two.
So there's a lot to unpack there, because I completely agree with you that there is still stuff for the Knicks to grab, which has got to be encouraging for them. Like, they stole a game in Boston, and they can say to themselves, there are still areas for us to focus on where we can improve, and we can be an even tougher matchup for them. We'll get into it, but I think a lot of that has, at least in my opinion, has to do with Karl Anthony Towns. I'm I think I'm just sort of in the middle when it comes to Boston and the shot variance thing. Not overall, but with game one,
Mm-hmm.
because I do, of course, understand that there's a ton of volatility with 3-point shooting, and Boston just makes a couple more of those, and maybe we're having, like, it's really hard not to be results oriented in that way, and you have to really fight hard. But I don't know if you saw the Tim Legler take where he basically dissed tracking data, and he was like, to anyone talking about all the open threes Boston shot, like, that tracking data is just off. And he was like, he was very, very critical of the tracking data. I'm not going to claim a certainty there. I didn't do a super deep dive into game one. I've kind of had a not busy last few days, but just kind of been all over the place. But what I will say is it definitely seemed like the Knicks' strategy in terms of switching everything with those hard hedges and trying to prevent Boston from getting to the rim, but also not just letting them swing the ball around the perimeter and find open shooters. It really felt like it forced Boston to shoot more of their threes off the dribble as opposed to off the catch, which I think does matter. I think Boston is an elite, an amazing offense, um, and they're an amazing 3-point shooting team. But I do think that aside from Derek White and Jason Tatum, it is about their ability to create advantages inside the arc so that they can spray the ball around and find all these shooters who can shoot off the catch. And so I think that discrepancy does matter and maybe isn't reflected in the shot quality data. I could be wrong about that. I don't think I am, though. And to me, you asked what do you don't think the Celtics have to do anything differently. I think the Celtics can largely come to game two with the same game plan, and I think they can trust their overall system and their overall game plan. One difference I would like to see if I was a Celtics fan, though, is I would like to see Jason Tatum specifically force the issue a bit more inside the arc. I think that this is a series that's going to call for that in a way that maybe he hasn't been relied upon in the past. Because the Knicks do have switchable wing defenders, and as long as Brunson and Towns don't like just fall apart and collapse defensively, I don't see why after that game one the Knicks would go away from that. Like it's on the Celtics to disincentivize Tibbs from using the strategy that was fairly successful in game one. And is that going to be through just making more shots? Maybe. But I think the way you get a coach like Tom Thibodeau to look in a different direction is to hurt him in ways that he doesn't want to be hurt. And that's at the rim. And we've talked about it all season long with Jason Tatum. That is his superpower. He's the head of the engine. He's what makes the offense go. And maybe he gets underrated because a lot of people don't realize that. We talked about the hockey assists on the last episode. Tatum is everything to this Boston offense in terms of advantage creation inside the arc. He is in a way that Jaylen Brown isn't really close. Like Jaylen Brown is a very skilled player, but he's not nearly the passer that Jason Tatum is on the move. And I just don't think that defenses view the two similarly at all, especially when you have Tatum having the pull-up three as a weapon and Jaylen Brown isn't a very good shooter, at all. It's 3 years in a row now. He's been a below-average league-wide shooter. So yeah, I think my one big adjustment would just be to enable and elevate Tatum more and give him a greater role, because I think they want to get back to that world where a higher percentage of their threes are coming off the catch and coming on that beautiful action where they're spraying the ball around the arc and it ends up in the shooter they want's hands who just gets an open in rhythm three off the catch. We didn't see too many of those in game one. And I think that Tatum is the answer to getting more of those for Boston.
This is great. This is great. That was a great kind of start to the conversation, opening monologue. That was awesome. And I also think it's great because I see a ton of disagreement here that I have with a lot of your perspective. At least I think so. I mean, we can we'll work through it and clarify for sure. But I think it's helpful because people complain about us agreeing too much, and I think I just see some key diverging points. But first, shout out to the chat. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Appreciate you guys being here as always. Keep dropping your comments and questions. After we talk a little bit, we'll just start seeing what people are talking about. So shout out to all of you guys there, and would love to hear what you think about our conversation, or just separately what you think about adjustments, what adjustments should be made, what adjustments are going to be made, what you think about the job Tibbs did, the job Mazzulla did, anything you can think of. We'd love to hear your perspectives. So here's what I'll say. The part I agree with you about is there were a ton of off the dribble threes from Boston. And I do think that is not ideal for them. That's not what they would like. They would like more catch and shoot threes that come as a result of driving to the hoop, penetration, driving kicks, getting those wide open 3-point shots on catch and shoot, whether they're in the corner or deep above the break. I think they're fine with either of those, and they would take either of those over a large diet of pull up threes. That being said, I don't know which specific data, like who's using what data and what tracking data Tim Legler is necessarily referring to. I do know, and shout out to Knicks Muse on Twitter who sent me the shot quality from the game after the game, and it is from the shot quality Twitter account, who I think it has a good reputation for using good tracking data, and that does account for off the dribble threes. That does account for the lower percentage shot chance for making shots off the threes. I mean off the dribble threes. And the Celtics had a 126 shot quality score and the Knicks had a 112 shot quality score. So the Celtics had a 14-point shot quality win if and after you account for the large diet of pull-up threes that they took as opposed to catch and shoot threes. And that's just a result of like you're shooting 63 pointers, man. You're shooting like no matter what, you shouldn't be shooting 25% on 63s, especially when only I think 4 of them were like really closely contested, whether they were catch and shoot or off the dribble. Here's what I will say. I think that the Knicks strategy of switching, I think it's such a good strategy that they should do more of it. I don't think they did it enough. There was too much hedging, in my opinion. Too much hedging from Brunson and Towns in some situations. They switched, they pure switched sometimes, but I think they need to do it more. Because I do think you have to force this Boston team to shoot off the dribble threes. And that's what you'll just live with. You'll live with it. You'll live with whatever the shot quality they get. I think the Knicks are not going to expect to have a better shot quality game than the Celtics in this series. Maybe one game or two potentially, but I don't think they're going to live off of beating the Celtics on creating higher quality shots. I think they're going to live off of the variance. And so I think as long as you can get them to shoot off the dribble threes, you live with whatever happens. But I do think, as far as your point of kind of getting Tibbs to look in a different direction and some of that stuff, I don't think they want him to. I think that they want to play the way that they played. I think that they want the 3-point shots that they got. I think that they're happy to play this methodical pace. I think people often think that Boston is a fast-paced team because they shoot a lot of threes. They're a very slow-paced team. They want to walk it up the court if they don't have an advantage, have things set up with whoever they have on ball in isolation, whether it's Tatum or Brown. Get an advantage for Tatum or Brown by forcing a switch and then getting a shot at the rim or getting a wide open three, whether that's a pull-up three or catch and shoot three would be their ideal. That's how they want to play, and I think that that's how they're going to play. I don't think that they need to get Tibbs to try to do something different. I think the switching is what they're going to expect, and it's not like they're switching, the switching that we saw when they played against Orlando. That switching is a lot harder to deal with. I think Tatum is fine if he gets solid step back threes over, Brunson and Towns for a ton of the game. So I don't generally think they need to change much of their approach. I do think they should try to get more shots at the rim. I did feel like they were a bit passive with that, and they do get that way. They've gotten that way all season. They get a little bit passive with taking shots at the rim because they know that teams are going to give them threes, and so they're like, well, let's just take them. But I think they do pass up some looks at the rim. As far as mid-range shots, I don't think they need to increase that. I'm not saying that you said this, but I don't think they need to increase it. I don't think they need Tatum to kind of go into the mid-range and take Brunson into a lower variance shot space from the mid-range. I think that is playing into the Knicks' hands from if they did that, and I would strongly disagree that they should take that approach. Again, not saying that you said that. So to me, I just think that the Celtics are probably going to do exactly what they did. If they're not able to get more shots at the rim, they'll just live with what they did.
I think the Celtics should have looked into lowering the variance when they were up 20, but that's a different conversation.
We can have that conversation because I'm also not convinced about that, honestly. So we should have that conversation too.
Yeah, we can have it's a more general conversation than appropriate to this series, so we can have the conversation about like that game scenario down the line sometime. It's interesting that you say that though about like the Boston's just going to live with it, because if you're a Knicks staffer or somebody, drawing up a game plan and somebody told you that like, yeah, Boston's just going to live with Tatum shooting a high diet, like they're going to accept your coverage and live with, a heavy diet of pull-up threes from White and Tatum and maybe even Jaylen Brown because they're getting the mismatches they want. I feel like the Knicks should just view that as a win. Like the Knicks would take that too. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think we're in this weird situation, and I planned on saying this today, so it's funny that you're saying this. I think that we're in this weird situation where the Knicks and Celtics, their somewhat ideal strategies are like the same. It's kind of funny. I do think the Knicks would be like, "That's great, do that," and I think the Celtics would be like, "Cool, that's great, we're gonna do that." Like I think both teams are happy with that situation. I don't think a team that I think a 126 shot quality score to a 112 shot quality score is like a decimation in terms of like shot quality. And I don't think if you're getting that differential, a 14-point shot quality score, you should not change anything. That's what I would say.
It just feels paradoxical to me because the whole reason that the Knicks would feel comfortable doing this would be because you're upping the variance. Like that's what you do as the underdog. So it seems like the favorite should want to do the inverse from a strategy standpoint. At
Yeah,
least that's how.
I don't think it works. It works out that way perfectly. Like in theory and like in general, I agree with you. But I think I don't think you can lower the variance. I think the reason why the Celtics are so good is because of the kinds of shots that they take, which are inherently higher variance shots. So to say lower the variance would be like, okay, do a different thing that's not the strength of your team because you're the better team. But then you're taking away what makes you the better team. The reason they are the better team is because they take these kinds of shots.
I'm not sure I fully agree with that. I think there's a middle ground here. I think that the Celtics were on the extreme end, and I'm not just like being one of those guys like, oh, they took 63s, they took too many. Take 63s in games you can take 63s. Take 100% threes in games that in the rhythm and in the flow of the offense you create them. I mean, that you had that possession last time when Derek White had an easy 4 foot floater that he passed on because like he was wide open.
That's
4 feet
one
from the
thing that I
basket.
agree. They do that too much. That's what I was alluding to. But yes, that's the one thing I agree with
And,
as far as
and
that
so I
framing.
just think there's a middle ground here. I agree. I'm not saying that they should go away from what makes them great, but I do think that there's a world where they can maintain the system that makes them great, especially with Tatum, who is an amazing. His combination of speed, size, ball handling, and finishing is, almost unparalleled in the league. And I don't think it's this giant overhaul to ask him to just get to the rim more. I think he can do that within the confines of maintaining what makes them great. I actually don't. I don't think that's like. I don't think you're just doing a total 180 as the Celtics if you shoot a couple more, if you get to the rim a little bit more.
No, no, I agree with that. So it's like when you say lower the variance, if you mean by that when you get towards the rim, don't kick out to three, just take your shot at the rim, then I agree with that. If that's what you mean by it. When you say lower the variance, I think more about like the Jalen Brunson game, getting into the short mid range, medium mid range, taking shots that you can hit at like a 45% rate. Like that, I wouldn't agree with that. If you're saying like when you get to the rim, don't kick it out, just take a shot at the rim, I would agree with that. And I think that what happens with Boston is they forget that that is their strategy. They actually forget that like the point of the 3-point shooting is to take these shots at the rim. That they somehow seem to like lose that. They get lost in these 3-point shots, and I do think they take too many threes oftentimes because it comes at the expense of shots at the rim. I would not trade any of the 3-point shots that the Celtics got for like closer mid-range shots or medium mid-range shots. And if they did that again, I think they would be totally playing into the Knicks' hands. In fact, by so far as I would say the Knicks should then become the favorite in the series. That's how strongly I feel about that. And if they did
Yeah,
that, if they changed their approach that way, I would say, well, I would just switch over to favorite the Knicks in 7 games probably.
yeah. I wouldn't want them to like up their mid-range percentage. Although I do think conversation for another time. I do think certain game situations call for it, but at least relative to like these super volatile pull-up threes, like if you were just sorting by those things. Um, but what you're saying, to bring it back to the Knicks perspective, is sort of why I pitched the idea of a light ghost coverage on Jalen Brown. Because I think that, like, let's say hypothetically, you started playing into Jason Tatum's hands and uh, just extreme switch heavy anywhere, and he was just relentlessly getting Jalen Brunson on him. I think that what Tatum would do, like, if you just had a full game of Jalen Brunson getting switched on to Tatum, I think Tatum would answer with just a slew of layups, dunks, and kickouts. Like that would just be it. And the occasional pull up three. Like he would take the best shots, and the Celtics would win a huge percentage of the time. When people talk about what Jalen like why you can't deploy ghost coverage on Jaylen Brown. And I know he's playing kind of hurt here, but that's honestly, it's probably an even stronger argument for my case. Um, I don't see Jaylen Brown as the type of guy who's gonna up his usage by a lot and hurt you that way, the way that Tatum would. I actually think that what it would result in is him shooting a bunch of those like fadeaway middies that he likes over smaller defenders where he's really comfortable. And yeah, he's gonna make plenty of them. He's a really good player. But I think that would be playing into the Knicks' hands. I think that's why the Knicks should do that. Is that would get the Celtics fully out of what makes them great. I think there's a path here for the Celtics within this paradigm of the switch heavy scheme where Tatum can just up his usage and it can be beneficial to the Celtics and they can even widen the gap from a shot quality perspective.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I agree on and for everybody listening, when we say ghost coverage, it's just think of how teams defend Josh Hart with their center. That's what we're referring to. And doing that with Jaylen Brown and yeah, obviously I agree with that. And
yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. By the way, actually, let me interrupt you. I said why I pitched it. This was XJ's thing. I just this is what I do. Actually, I just like it's in my head, and I think XJ literally pitched me the idea of like should teams start doing this to Jaylen Brown in like December. So I apologize. Actually.
It's all good.
Just,
no.
Yeah.
It's all good. All I'm saying is that, like, yeah, obviously, I totally agree with you on that point because, yeah, for every reason that you just described, I don't think the Knicks are going to do it though. So that's the thing. I don't even think that's in Tibbs's mind as like a potential possibility. Like Tatum is cooking them. We had this in our back pocket to play off Jaylen Brown and protect the rim and let him kill us with long threes or long twos. Like I don't see Tibbs doing that. So it's not really a concern to me from a kind of a Celtics standpoint, but it would be really cool to see it happen, even if it didn't work. But I know everybody would be like, you can't do this against Jaylen Brown. Didn't you see the first quarter of the one time the Warriors tried to do it that one time? It's impossible. Like he didn't go 1 for 10 from three in game one.
It's funny you can be results oriented across small sample sizes when it confirms your bias, but when it doesn't, it's just like that's a small sample size. Ignore that. It's
right.
Very very interesting how that works for. I will say though, did you feel yourself there, XJ, sort of switch over to the dark side? You were like, nah, let's not talk about this because Tibbs wouldn't do it because you're not one of those.
I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about it. All I'm saying is like he won't do it, but yeah, we should obviously talk about it.
No, I'm just joking.
All right, let's check out some of the super chats. Let's check out some of the chats, I should say. Well, we do have a super chat. That was completely unintentional. I did not realize that we did. Shout out to Matt again with the 8 Aussie bucks. Really appreciate that. It's very kind of you. Meh says, I kindly would like to give you an advice to slightly increase the default audio volume. I had to crank my volume up to 75% to be audible. Yeah, there's a couple things that we're struggling with a little bit here. Just taking you behind the curtain, we use this program called Riverside. Most podcasts that do YouTube live streaming use another software called StreamYard. Riverside is like 1/4 of the price and you still get really high quality picture, but the problem with it is that it's not greatly integrated with YouTube. And so that's causing a lot of problems for us with YouTube that I'm trying to work on, as well as I saw somebody else say that they didn't get a YouTube notification that the stream started, and that's because Riverside has like really bad integration. So that's something we're still working on. Appreciate you saying that. And I don't know that there's much we could do about it. Jeff can turn up his a little bit, but I'm going to probably be a little low. But again, working on that. Really appreciate that comment because we're trying to get all the logistical stuff and technical stuff right as well. It's important to the pod. Try to do a high quality podcast. Let's go to John Liry. Shout out to John Liry, who is here. Last game felt weird in the first half, down by 16, but it didn't feel like the Celtics were playing great. Yeah, it was weird. I didn't feel like the Celtics were playing great. I thought that the strategy to foul Mitchell Robinson was hugely disruptive to the Knicks offense. I thought it was a really great move by Mazzulla in that time. And I'm not always in favor of the like intentional foul and sending the big to the free throw line kind of thing, especially, with Mitchell Robinson, Steven Adams, guys like that. But I thought it was hugely disruptive. And I thought it really took the Knicks out of a rhythm. And so to me, that's not a decision you can look at just from like a points per possession standpoint, which if the big goes 1 for 2, it's a good possession for the most part. But I think it's also something from a rhythm standpoint. And I felt like the Knicks didn't have a rhythm until the second half. And I thought that was a pretty significant reason why.
There's an underrated part about hacking a center that gets kind of slept on by a lot of people. When the center is the bad free throw shooter who you're fouling, the opposing team is less likely to get the offensive
Yeah,
rebound
it's a
because
good point.
usually the center is the guy who's the best offensive rebounder.
That's a good point.
So when you're trying to figure out overall points per possession, you're including offensive rebound percentage. It's actually
Mm-hmm.
bad analysis to include the team's offensive rebound percentage because that's usually heavily reliant on the center who's an elite offensive rebounder. That's probably why he's out there.
That's an
So,
incredible point. Great point. Love that.
thank you. Um, I have to say, actually, and anyone who watches this, Knicks fans probably roll their eyes at this, knows that actually and I both love Derek White. Like, just think he's so good. I would argue that Derek White was the best Celtic in the playoffs last season. I think there's just overwhelming evidence of that. Um, and I think that White is closer to Tatum than he is to any other Celtic. Like, I think he's clearly the second best Celtic and second most important Celtic. When he hit that Dante DiVincenzo like three from above the break on the left side, and then he switched onto Towns and met Towns at the rim and blocked him from behind, and then the Celtics came back
Yeah.
down and scored to go up 20.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at the box score because Tibbs called timeout, and the Knicks were out shooting the Celtics from three at that point when the Celtics were up 20.
Yeah.
And I was certain that this series was over in four. I was just like, if the Knicks can't be within 20 in this game when the Celtics aren't even making their shots, I don't get how they have any chance in this series at all. Like, I didn't, that was my thought at the time. And then, of course, the Knicks upped the pace. They shot
Mm-hmm.
11 3-pointers across the next 10 minutes.
Yep.
The Celtics kept missing shots. And within 10 minutes, OG Anunoby had a pick six and the game was tied. So the fuck do I know?
No, I think that's on point because it definitely does seem like that if the team is not. But you would of course have part of your thought process there is that the Celtics are eventually going to make shots, right? Like that's what you
Yeah.
would think. I'm sure the Cavs fans are thinking that too. The Cavs who have shot like well above their heads all season have been one of the best shot making teams in the league and over in recent memory have suddenly not been able to make shots. And so, that's how things go. And I think this comment is totally relevant to that. You guys were bang on with the variance factor, really hoping Mikhail's overtime gives him confidence going forward. He plays against Boston with so much fear. Shout out to Dragonite Skies. Yeah, what do you think?
I think Mikal plays. I don't mean to just totally. I'm not totally disagreeing. I think Mikal plays mostly the same way against all teams, or at least he has as a Nick this season. I think it's just more damning against the Celtics because it's so much more harmful when he probes inside the arc. He can get to the rim and he's like, "Nah, I'll just take this fadeaway 12-footer." Like Missoula must laugh every time that occurs, especially if he's going to go 3 for 13. Um, yeah, so I don't know if it's specifically a fear factor against Boston. I think it's just how he's played this season for whatever reason. He's just allergic to getting to the free throw line, allergic to getting to the basket. I have no like the I have the data up right here. It's insane. It's if you look at his um how often he was how often he shot free throws this year and how often he got to the rim, he just completely fell off a cliff. It's like he just stopped doing it. Let's see. I have the data here. Okay. He shot 1.4 free throws per 75 possessions, down from 4. His free throw attempts were cut in a third from his last 2 seasons in Brooklyn. And okay, the rim attempts aren't as bad, but they're down. It's a career low, I think. Yeah, it's a career low per
I don't
75
I don't know
possessions.
how relevant it is or how related it is. I do think it's somewhat related to this, but in the time that Brunson was out, that missed a bunch of games in the middle of the season, Mikal Bridges' shooting foul drawing doubled in that time, and then went right back down to where it has been after that. So
It of course has to have some relevance because Brunson is so he commands the ball such a high percentage of the time. But I mean, you saw what OG main like why it just doesn't make sense to me that OG is the one who is able to take these tertiary possessions. You know, he's more aggressive with his shot. He gets to the rim sometimes. Like, that's not how I thought it would go. I don't think Macau is taking full advantage of the possessions he does have available to him.
I agree with you. And what I really like that Bridges does, and he did it, I think, only once in game one, but when he gets an early seal in the post, if he has a guy like Peyton Pritchard on him in some kind of cross match, or that's just the guy they put on him, I love when he sprints down the court and gets an early Obi Toppin seal at the paint in the rim, near the rim, and they feed him, and he can draw fouls that way and get easy buckets. That's something that both Bridges and OG did against the Oklahoma City Thunder in their first game in the first half, and I think that's a really effective way to play. So hopefully he does more of that from the Knicks perspective. Let's see.
I like the one Peyton Pritchard pull up 3 extra when Mitch was in drop.
Yeah,
and like that's the stuff that Tibbs deserves credit for. He was like, all right, let's try Mitch and drop. And Pritchard just walks into an open. Enough of that. All right, back to the like you can't drop against Boston. No. They're gonna kill you.
Not with Pritchard, not with Tatum, not with Derek White. Kind of not with Drew Holiday. You can probably get away with it with Brown. Is the only one. Jeffrey Glynn says, I keep hearing talking heads talk about the Celtics having 45 open threes, and that's the reason, and that the reason they lost was because they didn't hit. How much stock do you put into that? That's kind of what we've been talking about. I do think that's the reason the Celtics lost. I also think that's what the Knicks are banking on for them to win this series. So I don't think it's a problem. I don't think it's like, oh, the Knicks got really lucky and that's why they won. I think it's like the Knicks, in order to overcome being a huge underdog in a series, you need to get lucky, and they're getting lucky from the kinds of shots that are most conducive to the Knicks getting lucky on. So to me, there's nothing wrong with that, but I do think that is a major part of the story.
Yeah. Like, the Knicks are rolling up. The Knicks are basically trying to roll a 4-sided die instead of a 6-sided die. Like, that's what they're going for here.
Yeah.
And yeah, like their number might come up, is obviously going to come up more often on the 4-sided die than the 6-sided die. But if you do the things that give you, slightly better odds, then you are putting yourself in a position to, you sort of, I'm not one of those like you make your own luck people, but you are giving yourself a better chance to get lucky. And there's an important difference there. But yeah.
Yep, it's a great point. Shout out Alejandro Romero. Hot take: Tatum still doesn't work well under pressure. He's not a clutch player. He's more like a great home run hitter when the team gets going. And I also want to say I saw Alejandro's other comment, and he said, I'm the Magic fan that got on the pod to talk Paolo, by the way. Love seeing that you guys keep growing. Elite Basketball Podcast. Appreciate you so much for that, Alejandro. Yeah, that was a great episode. One of our first live streams where we brought on, people to talk about Paolo Banchero. What are your thoughts on the original take on Tatum?
Did you see that somebody commented on that like a week ago?
No, that's really funny. It's like,
yeah, they responded like update ? And it's like, dude, what does how he's playing now have anything to do with what we were talking about then? It's like, man,
imagine imagine being like, oh, LeBron really didn't play well in that series against the Mavericks in the championship series against the Mavericks, and like 5 years later, somebody's like, update about he still did not play well in that series. What's the update? I don't
exactly. But it's especially funny because we're tossing around making some pro Paolo content because the tides kind of turn the other way. So yeah, that person who typed updates can be like, oh shit, yeah, I like these guys.
That's true.
Man, the clutch thing with Tatum is so interesting because first of all, it's funny because before he actually won a championship last year, I got into big arguments with certain people. I don't know if everybody remembers the playoff Jimmy stuff, but if you look at those 2 Heat series from 2022 and 2023, Tatum like dismantled Butler. And the only difference was that in 2023, the Heat like were amazing when Butler didn't play. And that was like the Caleb Martin bullshit. Like when Caleb Martin shot 70% from three.
Yeah, Caleb Martin was just like a star. He was the Derek White star guy.
Right. Really now he can't shoot. And I actually thought that Tatum had a number of just really, really impressive playoff runs. I did not love what he did in 2024. Now, I don't think that's like an indictment on him, as sometimes we've said the word variance way too many times on the show, but sometimes you just have bad games.
It's a variant
What,
shell, man. That's
yeah,
what it's unavoidable.
across small sample size. I do sort of understand when Tatum gets in these zones where he's relying on his 3 point shot. I think he's a good to very good 3 point shooter, but particularly when it's a lot of step backs off the bounce. I understand as a fan being like, there's something off about that, like being not queasy
Mm-hmm.
about it, but just being like, man, it feels like he's settling a lot, and if you're viewing it from the other team's perspective, you're like, oh, okay, if Tatum makes those, you're dead, like, and it just does feel like there's extra volatility to his particular jump shot. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I fully agree with the take that like he'll never work under pressure, because I think there's tons of evidence that he does play really, really well in these big pressure moments. But I do sort of get how his volatile style could maybe be, maybe lead people down that road, or to at least question it.
I largely agree. I think that the reason why Brunson is such a ridiculously good clutch player is because his game is conducive to those situations. The shots that he wants to get to at the end that are his best shots, those are shots he can just get to. Like, you can't
Yep.
just stop a guy from getting to 10 feet away. That's hard to do, like, to just stay in front. He can, as long as he doesn't have to get past you. That's the thing. He just has to get next to you, and that's much easier to do than to blow past you, get all the way to the rim and lay it up. And Tatum doesn't have that ability as much as Jalen Brunson does to get to a shot 10 feet from the rim and just make it almost every time. As a result, Tatum's game is much higher variance. It relies on step back shots from long range. And at the end of games, it's more difficult to get to the rim because defenses aren't going to let you. They're going to load up at the rim and live with your shooting. Because of that reason, Tatum's going to struggle, in my opinion, in these kind of clutch situations if he's not hitting those long range shots. Whereas a guy like Brunson, he's getting exactly what he wants to get. He wants to get 8 to 10 feet away, and he's going to make those shots at a ridiculously high clip. So I do think that the difference in terms of the pressure situations is not necessarily a matter of makeup, like mental makeup or something like that, but I think it's more a function of the types of shots that these players want to get to and where their sweet spot is.
I also just want to say, like, mm, actually, I know I'm a little bit biased here. Like, we as NBA fans, with regards to this playoff riser, playoff dropper thing, the way we analyze that has been completely skewed by LeBron. Like, after the 2011 Maverick series that actually mentioned, LeBron didn't have a single, even like below average playoff series. He was literally great for like 15 straight years in play. That's not normal. That's not how
Yeah.
it's supposed to work. You're not supposed to just always be able to be like efficient and great. You're supposed to have bad games. Like, just think about a regular season. Think about, I mean, the person who just commented, we know he's a Magic fan. Think about how annoying it was when Paolo had like, a span of 4 to 5 straight bad games, and it was just people were trying to just dismantle his whole ability as a basketball player. It's like, no, dude, people just have bad stretches. That happens to everybody. It just didn't, for whatever reason, it didn't happen to LeBron in these playoff games. He was able to lock in and get to a level that it's unparalleled. But if you look at every other level of player who's in sort of Tatum's range, they all have these series or these games where it's like, oh man, like they're playoff droppers, and it's like, no, they just had a bad game, because that's what happens to these guys sometimes.
Yeah, fair enough. We got 20 minutes left on this. This has been an awesome time. Let's try to go quicker through the comments so we can kind of get to everybody's comments. I see such great comments in the chat. First, Stacks, different timing, shout out. My guys, what's good? Finally caught y'all live. Appreciate you being here. We want to really do this very consistently, like do these live streams and interact with the chat. And we're just going to continue getting better at it. It's kind of early in our process of doing this, but like this is something we want to do. And next year, I think we're going to be doing a ton of it. So this is kind of just the first iteration, but appreciate you guys being here with us. A10 says did they actually limit easy threes effectively, or is the shot data correct? You talked about a little bit about the shot data. What do you think about that? You know what,
I just
Jeff? We had talked about like you doing a compilation of every missed three that the Celtics shot. That would have been so
mhm,
helpful
it
just to
really
see
would.
like the kinds of shots that they were getting.
Yeah, it really would have been helpful. I think it's just somewhere in the middle. I think it's totally reasonable for Celtics fans or for just analysts to be like, whatever. They missed 45 threes. If they hit two more, they win, and that's purely variance. But I think something that actually and I talked about before the game, and he just mentioned it a little bit ago. The Knicks want to embrace that variance. That's what you do as an underdog, and they gave the Celtics the threes for the most part that they thought gave them the best possible chance of having a run of the Celtics missing a lot of these threes. Again, it's not like the Celtics were passing the ball around the perimeter and finding Peyton Pritchard in rhythm uncovered, So that's just sort of where because that's a lot of what they did during the regular season. They created these advantages inside the arc and then got the kickouts and swing passes. And I thought the Knicks did a good job of dissuading that and preventing those things. So, I think it's just a little bit of both, and I think the Knicks are gonna live with the variance.
Yep, I mean I agree with that. I do think it's large. I think it's to me it's more towards variance as opposed to the shot quality. I think they got really good shot quality overall. So I trust in the data in that way, but yeah, I do think it's like it's a little bit of both there. Jordan Bubb says, I believe the Knicks will be switching even more often than what the Celtics saw in game one. To me, Jordan, this is the exact adjustment I think that tip should make. And it's really interesting. Again, you won a game on the road, and you're like, well, should be the ones making adjustments? I think that you saw what works well and what doesn't work well, and the way that you're going to win this series. And the way that you're going to win this series is by switching heavily, letting Tatum go to step back threes all game, and letting these other guys not get open and get shots off of great penetration and kick out. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yep, well heard by me.
Let's. Jordan also says Brunson will go off for 15-point fourth quarter in game two, and I believe we get a much better overall floor game from Cat. Yeah, we didn't talk about Cat. What did you think about his game?
You mentioned compilations, doing compilation of all the missed threes by Boston. I want to do a compilation of the times that Towns is in the mid post or even on the low block and has a cross court a 3-point shooter open on the weak side. Like somebody needs like that is his he can do that. He can make those passes. He's a great passer. And that is the way for the Knicks to up their 3-point volume without relying on Jalen Brunson to create every single advantage. Because Towns has a size advantage over a lot of the Celtics roster, and the Celtics do like to switch. And if Towns gets that switch, rather than him starting from the perimeter, plant him on the block, and we know that the Celtics like to pre-hedge. And, you can have Hart setting flare screens. You can have Hart cutting through. There were a couple of times when Hart made brilliant cuts to occupy the roamer. Like the Celtics, the reason they feel comfortable doubling Towns in the mid post or on the low block is because, especially when Hart's on the floor, they know that their roamer can just leave Hart alone. But if Hart makes a cut, or if he sets a flare screen, that counters that. And so there were a number of times where Hart made a cut and it occupied the roamer, and you had Bridges, Anunoby, Deuce open on the weak side, and Towns has just got to make those passes.
Along those lines, we also have this question from Vito. What do you think is the path is to getting Cat more 3-point attempts? So you kind of broke down one aspect of it about his passing and decision making. How do the Knicks get Cat more threes, and should they? Maybe it's fine, the way that they're using him, and that's his utility in this series. What do you think?
Nah, dude, fuck that. What? That's what? 1-3? That's fine. I can't believe the Knicks won a game or Towns got 1-3. That's crazy. Pace. I'd up the pace more so that he can shoot those sort of trailer threes that he loves to shoot above the break.
Mm-hmm.
I would just run more Brunson Towns pick and roll, even if the Boston has answers to it. Like it still is creating advantages in certain ways. And Yeah, those would be my main two ways within the realm of a realistic world for the Knicks. Like there are ways to
Yeah.
get Towns more threes, but I'm not gonna be like, hey, why don't you start running that elevator action? Like, no, they're not gonna fucking do that. So let's talk about what they can do. And yeah, I would just move the ball faster like they did in the third quarter, and I would put Towns in the action with Brunson more. And look, the Celtics are an amazing team. They're not perfect. They're gonna slip up sometimes, and Towns is gonna get more available looks to him, more looks available to him if he's just involved in the action more.
Yep, I think that's spot on. David Pritchard says another point I haven't seen talked about enough is tangentially related to the open threes tracking data thing. Part of Tibbs' philosophy is to protect the paint at the expense of allowing threes. Totally, and that kind of is consistent with what we were talking about. As far as a situation where the Celtics try to get more shots at the rim, Tibbs are able to convert those shots at the rim, that would encourage, like Jeff was saying, Tibbs to make more adjustments. And I do think the Celtics are going to just like make a concerted effort to take shots when they get to the rim and not kick out for threes when they have a decent shot near the rim. But I don't think they're going to kind of change too much of their approach besides that. But I agree. That is Tibbs's first, second, and third priority is stopping shots at the rim. And the Celtics could push for him to make an adjustment without even really changing much of how they played, but just taking those shots that they get when they're available to them.
For sure. 100%.
Shout out A10. Do you anticipate any Mitch rotation changes to limit Hacka Mitch? What do you think about that? It's a really good question. I didn't really think about like Mitchell Robinson's kind of role in this series because I already kind of thought this wasn't a great series for him, but he still played 21 minutes somehow despite all those fouls and went 3 for 10 from the free throw line. So what do you think is going to happen there?
And led the Knicks in plus minus. What a great stat in game plus minuses. I would assume it's going to be similar to last game. If Mitch is, if they're using the hack strategy effectively and he isn't a dominating presence defensively and on the offensive glass, I think Tibbs would be justified in looking another direction, whether that's OG as the backup center, whether that's trying Precious across spot minutes. Again, people got really mad at me for saying this, but they got really mad. Mitch is obviously a better basketball player than Precious. Like I can't believe that I need to qualify this statement. My exact hypothetical was if Mitch has a couple more shifts like that, where he's not dominating the offensive glass, not like this super great defensive impact player, and the Celtics are just getting the Knicks out of their offense by sending him to the line, and he's just clanking free throws, I don't think Tibbs is unjustified to go in a different direction. And he did go in a different direction. So why are people still popping in my mentions saying I'm stupid? Like, I don't get it. He literally immediately subbed Mitch out and tried OG at the 5 and then tried Precious to end the first half. This is like one of the craziest things to wake up to. It's like, oh, this moron thinks he knows basketball. All right, dude. Like, great.
Yeah, it is funny that people might think that you think that, which is obviously the furthest thing from what you actually think. But another shout out to Matt who dropped another super chat and mentioned basically ball to Mitch, pretend 3-point shot while hack broken. So maybe they can figure out a way to get some 3-point shooting fouls. I do think that I do think there are ways that you can deal with it now that the Knicks know it might be coming. And I think because the Knicks know it might be coming, the Celtics might not do it very much. Because as a couple people have said this, and I lost one in the comments, so I'm sorry, but Jeffrey says, do you see Tibbs deploying Mitch earlier in quarters to prevent the hack of Mitch Robinson strategy? And I do think that is a really interesting point, which, if they're going to foul, Jeff is shaking his head, obviously, but just from a strategic standpoint, it does make sense to play him more earlier on in the quarters, because if they're willing to drag themselves into the bonus and then have to deal with Jalen Brunson drawing 15 fouls with 2 minutes left in the quarter, I mean, that's a tough situation for the team to be in. So I don't think they would do it if Mitch came in earlier.
It's a great strategy. Tibbs just won't do it. Dude, he plays the starting lineup like the first 9 minutes of every half. Like, that's what he does.
This was the other comment. Mario said the same thing. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, no, these are very, like, I wasn't dismissing the idea. The idea is great. Tibbs just won't do it. You know what he might do? His way to get Mitch in earlier in the quarter, it might be to just play Towns the whole first and third and then start the fourth. that might be his way to. Oh,
Dude, I could
oh,
totally see that. I could totally
yeah.
see that.
Oh, I know how to get Mitch in earlier in the quarter. It's just not play the first or third quarter and then start the fourth, second and fourth. That might
Dude,
be how he does it.
that
He
might
just
happen tonight. That might actually
yeah.
happen tonight. This
he
will be a
he just
clip. This will be a
loves
clip.
he loves starting games and starting the second half. My favorite Tibbsism is when the third quarter starts terribly, like it often does with the Knicks, and he just plays the starters longer. He's not like, oh, they're struggling. Let's go with a different look. He's like, nah, they need more time out there. Like it's, oh man, that is like a classic Tibbsism.
It's totally
Yeah,
true.
I just don't see him doing like the Kenny Atkinson thing of pulling Evan Mobley with 8 minutes left in the first quarter. I
Yeah.
don't see that happening.
Hey, we might be shocked. Who knows? He started. He
Yeah.
did some switching. I don't know, but it's not something that they've done all season. But Ashwin says, "Hey guys, no intelligent comments from me. Just wanted to say you're doing great things. Good luck. Appreciate that, Ashwin.
I have to
I
say,
think that's an
XJ,
intelligent comment, but
I was about to say the same thing. I think saying we're doing great things is an intelligent comment. So
we're on the same page.
he's like I'm an idiot, but you guys are brilliant. It's like, oh shit, what does that mean?
I don't think he's saying that, but
I know.
Blood of the Panther, what's up? How you doing? Shout out and salute. The Knicks are evolving in real time, and if the Celtics don't realize it, things will get dark soon. I expect them to respond, but the Knicks have a chance to do the funniest thing ever. This entire series is proof of concept that growth isn't linear, and right now we are growing in real time. Interesting comment here from Blood of the Panther. What do you think about this? Do you think the Knicks are just starting to tap into their ceiling that you and I have claimed all season? This is a championship roster. We've claimed that all season repeatedly, multiple episodes where we start the episode talking about this. And this is in the context of our conversation. The Knicks have a championship roster that we believe in. Is this a situation where if Tibbs is starting to optimize them to maximize the what we can get from all of these players, we can see the Knicks just compete with anyone just on a talent basis that we both believe that they have?
It's certainly possible. Yeah, I don't like it's not impossible, but I would want to see more of the second half. I would want to see more than a half because I don't think they were very good in that Detroit series. Like I don't think the Detroit series was the sign of a team growing linearly or non-linearly and peaking at the right time. I thought they played a team that they were a lot better than, poorly, could have lost multiple games that they won and squeaked by. But I do agree with there are plenty of reasons to be optimistic about that second half against Boston, and maybe even, as certain people have alluded to, the first half, because it did feel like the score should have been closer than it was at halftime. And like actually I said, the Celtics made a really smart move of getting the Knicks out of their rhythm by hacking Mitch and kind of dominating that little stretch there, to forcing them to go to other areas that they in turn dominated even harder with the small lineups or with Precious on the court. But I think the Knicks played a good game, and it's certainly possible that Blood of DePanta is right.
In a weird way, I kind of felt more encouraged by their first half than the second half, and that's super weird to say. But I just thought the first half of the first half, maybe going a little bit into the second quarter, I thought they were just playing really well, and I thought it was pretty sustainable. I thought the second half was just like kind of driven by so many shots that Boston was missing, and they seemed to have like unravel, which again, shout out to experience. This is a championship roster that literally is coming off of winning a championship, and somehow they were able to unravel the same way that the Detroit Pistons unraveled, who don't have any experience. Maybe experience is not the factor here. Maybe this just happens to NBA players and all humans and all walks of life. So it's
not championship experience, XJ. Tibbs is twice Joe Mazzulla's age. Tibbs has the experience advantage in this particular case. He doesn't have the championship experience, but just the overall depth of his experience is winning out in this regard.
That is true. Perry Stein says, not to overreact to a fluky game, but is there something to balancing load and playing your guys significant minutes for playoff conditioning, i.e. Spida just 2 games over 37 minutes all season? So obviously we could go very deep on this, but let's try to keep it very high level so we can get towards the rest of the chats in the next 5 minutes. But what are your just quick 2-sentence thoughts on this?
I'm gonna pass it over to XJ. I don't have a 2 sentence thought on this. That's I'm gonna let you take this one, buddy. No,
I would
I
just,
mean,
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
I don't, I don't, I don't think so. My thoughts on the Cavs are that their plan this whole season was to lean into their depth, and they didn't want to get to a place where Mitchell had to play 40 plus minutes in a game. And I think it's I don't know about like criticizing a strategy based on a game where they were without three of their best players. With that being said, I think absolutely that the Knicks players are more prepared to play these heavy minutes than any. I don't think that's arguable, but I don't think it's that simple either. Like, I think you're just reducing it to only the positive about the overall trade offs, and there are tons of other factors to consider.
Yeah, and my like quick 1 second like position is just that I don't think Donovan Mitchell got ramped up for the playoffs, and so like Jeff said, maybe the expectation was not that he would have to play so many minutes. Because if so, that's not doing due diligence on the coaching part for Kenny Atkinson to not ramp him up. I think you want his minutes to be low early in the season, and towards the end you want it to ramp up so that when it's time to play 43, 44, 47 minutes in a game, he is able to do it without kind of like just falling apart. So um, shout out
I also
to
don't think he fell apart. Like, I don't know why Kenny Atkinson said that. They were
yeah, I don't
up
know why he said
7.
that
They were up
either.
7 with 50 seconds left, and Max Strus threw the ball away. That wasn't Donovan Mitchell. And then Aaron Nesmith jumped inside the 3 point arc 7 seconds early. Yeah, he got the offensive rebound. Good job. They didn't call that. And then he literally took Mitchell's head and slammed it into the turnbuckle. Like, what the fuck, man? How is this at all an indictment on their conditioning? It was like the most ridiculous ending possible. I don't know. Like, that
Yeah.
was. I can't believe that was the narrative from that game. And I can't believe that Kenny Atkinson invited that narrative by saying that. Like,
Yeah, to
it's
be
been
honest,
his strategy
it was
all
Atkinson's
season.
fault why that was the
Yeah.
narrative. It was I don't think that came up organically, but we got 2 minutes left. Let's keep going. Shout out to Mario. It's gonna be hard to interact with the comments next year when you guys blow up. Really appreciate it. It's very kind. We're gonna continue to interact with the comments. We are going to do everything we can to grow this podcast as much as we can, as fast as we can, as large as we can, because we do want to kind of have it be prevalent in the NBA community to have discussions sort of the way that we try to, with an open mind, with thinking through things from an analytical perspective, but taking all of people's perspectives and opinion into account. And so to kind of spread that more through the NBA community, we're gonna try really hard to grow this podcast, but really appreciate that. And we're always gonna still interact with comments though, regardless. All right, we got 2 minutes left, Jeff. Is there anything? Multiple people are saying Blood of DePanta said. Multiple people are letting us know that Horford is starting over Porzingis.
Man, that's really smart by Missoula. God, he's a really good tech. He's just really smart. I mean,
I don't know
so
that part of it is not because of his illness or whatever, but yeah, I think it makes sense from a strategic standpoint as well.
I mean, that lineup's been better. It takes pressure off Porzingis. It lets him come off the bench and play more comfortable minutes. I think the Celtics are going to be better to start halves with this Horford lineup. The proof is in the pudding. It's a really good decision.
And Horford's much more switchable as well, so there's that factor as also. All right, thank you guys for being here. As always, the chat was going. We got tons of great comments and great thoughts. Bigger audience than we had in game one. Let's have an even bigger one in game three. Let's keep doing this, and we are gonna break everything down, and hopefully this is helpful in getting people prepared and excited and psyched up for the rest of the series and the game that is we are about to flow into. It's about to be 7 o'clock. So appreciate you all being here. We will be here in front of game three. And yeah, until then, this is Hot Hand Theory.